Someone had to read that script and go, do you know what? That's going to work great.
Lost Battalion of the Devons. Let's send two thick Tommies to find them, shall we? He's millimetres away from being turned into red sludge.
I don't really know what's going on there.
Yeah, they look a bit made up, to be brutally honest. What is it about Christmas, season of peace and goodwill, and war movies that go so well together?
They do. And we all know the best war movies have tanks in them.
There are good films, bad films, films with real tanks, films with replicas, and even in more recent years, films that make a great use of CGI.
These are just a few of our favourites.
Well, what other better way to start than Fury? It has our very own Tiger 131 and M4A2 E8.
The question is though, why did director David Ayer go to the lengths of risking something so historically irreplaceable, our one and only Tiger 131?
Well, there were a few mitigating factors in place. On set, the Tiger was operated exclusively by Tank Museum staff who really know what they're doing, and it was under the eagle eye of our workshop manager, Mike Hayden. But what it's all about is authenticity. It's not the plot, but it's the actual sense. It's the feel of the film as you watch it.
And when Tiger 1 is charging through that field, the dirt's getting chucked up, it looks like it's real. That's, well, because it is, it's a tiger driving through a field. But again, the magic of cinema and the willingness to, or the requirement to preserve tiger as much as possible meant that they actually laid a concrete track about 2 inches under the dirt for that scene. And it's ended up with an absolutely legendary shot of our workshop manager stood in a field looking particularly concerned, which always amuses me. But that's enough about Tiger. What about the Sherman?
Well, to stay on topic of authenticity, the fact that the actors, Brad Pitt, Michael Pena, Shia LaBeouf, they stayed with Fury throughout its filming, or at least for a couple of weeks. They slept in it and essentially tried to make parts of their daily lives what it would have been like for an Allied tank crew during World War II, just to add to that authenticity. And I think it works, because when you watch Fury, regardless of how accurate it is, the one thing it does phenomenally well is it feels very authentic.
I think you're absolutely right. And they actually the production values of that film, you can say what you like about the prop, but the production values are superb. I mean, the Fury tank from our museum is actually an M4A2 E8. It's meant to be an M4A3 E8. The difference is on the back deck. That was hidden by some carefully organised stowage.
And another thing that I personally really, really like about Fury, and it's not even to do with it fighting Tiger, it's the fact that we actually get to see a Sherman doing what it was historically designed for, supporting infantry, which we see towards the beginning of the film and in the middle of it as well, when they're supporting infantry as they go through that town. At the end of the day, you get loads of people who are like, oh, but Tiger's better than Sherman or whatever. It wasn't designed to take on Tigers. It was designed to support infantry on the battlefield. And we get to see that.
There is that criticism, though, of that sort of final scene, or one of the final scenes is when they do attack Tiger. While it is obviously realistic that you'd want to get around the side or the back, not probably that close, and especially if you were a Tiger commander, you wouldn't, reveal yourself from that position, which is an understandable criticism. But yet again, it's a film.
That being said, I mean, I believe the events in Fury do happen at like the beginning of 1945. So you could also argue that maybe they've got an experienced German tank crew, which were hard to find towards the end of the war. So who knows? I mean,
picking holes. But yeah, that's what we're here for. So let's lighten things up a little bit. There aren't many films with tanks in them that are particularly funny, certainly not comedies, but there is one that really starts to kick it off. Laurel and Hardy's Pack Up Your Troubles.
So, this is being filmed in Hollywood in the 1920s. It's a First World War tank. It's a Renault M1917. And predictably, Ollie is trying to get in while Stan is driving.
One thing I have to say about this scene is you actually get a great example of like a mocked up tank for the internal shots. And when you look at like more modern films, they had to do that when they filmed Fury. So in a way, it's basically just gone full circle of filming bigger scale models of tank interiors.
I'm not sure whether you call this next film a comedy or what. It's so surreal, I really don't know. It's the Beatles spin-off film, Help. Now, I don't even remember, it's actually got a tank in it. It's got a Centurion, a real one, the 3rd Royal Tank Regiment on the Salisbury Plain training area.
But beyond that, we're not entirely sure what's going on. I mean, you've got the Beatles performing a song and then getting chased by Centurions and then nearly getting run over by one, but then ending up inside of it and then getting engaged by anti-tank weapons and then finally some like Napoleonic era field artillery. I don't really know what's going on there.
I mean, on the bright side though, there is a very brief scene where you actually get to see footage from the inside of Centurion looking down the commander's sight, which I think is actually quite cool because that has clearly been filmed inside a real tank, which is very rarely done, even in modern films, because it's generally very difficult to film. But yeah, I think it's quite cool.
Yeah, if any of you do know what the hell is going on with this show, please let us know, because we have literally no idea.
Well, the advance of the tanks released in 1917 was the very first time tanks were viewed in cinemas by people.
When the first major war film came out, something of a documentary, Battle of the Somme, filmed by Jeffrey Mallins, middle of World War I, more people went to see that in the cinema than actually went to see the first episode of Star Wars.
And it's not really a film, as sort of the rest of them are on this list. It's much more sort of that documentary. It's a piece of propaganda film, really. Yeah. It's meant to inform as opposed to sort of entertain.
But the whole thing about it is the tank. There's been publicity about it. It's been in the newspapers. The tank is the British wonder weapon. People want to go and see what the fuss is all about.
Absolutely.
And similar to what you were saying, Chris, I mean, people sometimes don't realise that during the First World War, that was really the only way people could actually see what was going on the front line. And to be honest, that almost kind of just continues all the way into World War II. Hence why you always got like war reels before movies anyway. Battle of the Bulge, released in 1965, has probably got to be one of the best examples of using the wrong tanks to depict a World War II engagement.
Now, for what ought to be a high-budget movie, this is frankly quite chronic. I mean, you've got M47s painted grey with crosses on the side, trying to be King Tigers. And they filmed it in Spain in the summer. I mean, snow, sand, they're not even the same colour, are they?
Close enough.
I mean, they did that because they were using massive extras from the Spanish army to fill in. But really?
And the really annoying thing I find about the Battle of the Bulge is that the events that happened in December 44 are so interesting. And it's a story in its own right. You know, the small units of the Americans actually holding up this massive German advance. And the film just doesn't really do them justice, I find. The
other film that really comes to my mind is Patton. About the same time. Now, I've got no beef with George C. Scott. His depiction of Patton is really good, widely celebrated. But the film itself...
Yeah, so you've got kind of a similar situation, don't we? We've got US tanks, Cold War US tanks, acting as German Second World War armour. This time it's M48s in Tunisia, which I think they're supposed to be sort of Panzer IIIs or IVs or whatever. And then you've got, I think it's Chaffees, isn't it, acting as Shermans. Yeah. So it's, again, not great, but actually it's what they had. So you can't criticise them on that, but it's really obvious.
It's basically sheer desperation, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I am going to criticise is that one scene where there's an extra that dives underneath a tank and it looks like his helmet gets crushed. I don't know, I saw that and it just made me feel so anxious. Like, I don't know. Was that scripted? Did the guy just think, oh, I'm going to go in and just dive under this tank and hopefully not die?
I'm really surprised they kept that in because I saw that and it really made me wince.
Yeah.
He's millimetres away from being turned into red sludge. And it, in that scene towards the end, I mean, an experienced German formation. They're all bunched together going into artillery fire. They wouldn't have advanced like that, not in a million years. So, next film up, A Bridge Too Far. I honestly think this is one of the best war movies ever made. I absolutely love it. I mean, they had top grade advisors, Horrocks, Urquhart, generals actually been in charge, on the spot. And they got proper tanks as well from the Dutch and Belgian armies. They got Shermans, they got Fireflies, and real tank crew to operate things. It shows.
One of our colleagues, Bob, he 3rd RTR at the time, and he was a driver because he got drafted in. I think they came down to the unit and went, right, who wants to be a driver on a film? And a bunch of them put their hands up, and they ended up over in Holland, of all places.
Drinking beer, yeah.
And to be fair, that Allied armour column is real tanks. It's real armoured vehicles, although using a combination of historically accurate and also inaccurate. But because of the way it's dressed, you wouldn't really notice. I think there's a couple of M24 Chaffies, which I don't think were in service at that point. But does it matter? No, it still works. It's still real Allied armour. Where it does start to fall a bit flat, though, is when we get to the German stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of end up with leopards with hats, don't you? It's supposed to be a panther, we think, but it is just a leopard, Dutch Army Leopard 1 that they've painted in light grey and put a box over the top of it. You've also got a couple of other bits and bobs around there that are a little bit dodgy.
Yeah. That SS Recce column, the one that tries to get across the bridge, that is better because, it's quite a credible Famo half-track there. Some of the armoured cars, yeah, they look a bit made up, to be brutally honest.
Cursed-looking Marder in that part somewhere.
Yeah. But either way, I think, it's an excellent film, good production value.
So, from something serious to something a little bit more fun, Kelly's Heroes. Now, to start with this one, we have a real tank. And it's a technically sort of half-correct tank. It is a Sherman, pretending to be a Sherman, but it is weirdly, it's an ex-Yugoslav Sherman. So given to the Yugoslav army post-war, they were normal Shermans that were then, you put the 76 gun in the turret without the muzzle brake. So it ends up looking some sort of like a cursed Firefly crossover, but it is an in-service Sherman 76. But it's one of those things that, well, we know that. Well, I mean, we had to look it up, but does it really matter?
I think when it comes to these sorts of things, it's like, you can sometimes see the inaccuracies if you're like tank nerds like us. But when it comes to the actual filming itself, I don't really think it makes a difference. If you're 90% or 95% of the people watching are not going to notice.
99%, let's be honest.
And not only that, but at the end of the day, the film is a comedy. Like, does it take away from it? No, not at all. And it gives us something to pick out.
That one really doesn't, I can't see any problem with that. I mean, it's a Sherman, it's a Sherman. What they couldn't do is actually get a Tiger, obviously, because there weren't any around. But they dressed up a T-34. They did quite a good job of it. That high noon scene where they're walking down the street and the turret is coming round, I think that's absolutely excellent. Until Hardy Kruger, I think that's who the guy was, decides he'd rather be rich than an SS officer and hops out of the turret. Brilliant.
I mean, my favourite scene from Kelly's Heroes has to be when they're down that alley and they shoot the tiger in the backside with a paint round. It's not something you'll see in any other film.
That's paint! Hold up!
Moving on to good replicas. You're talking about not perfect, but reasonably good replicas. The opening section with the Saint-Chamons from All Quiet on the Western Front. That is those are replica tanks being used well to good effect, in my opinion.
Although in an interesting way, we are looking at legitimate armoured vehicles. If, for any of us who are tank nerds, who all of us are,
How dare you.
we can we can see that if you look at the road wheels on that vehicle, they have that sort of starry shape, which is very much prominent in the Soviet BMP series. And after doing a bit of digging, yeah, it turns out that that Saint-Chamond is based on a BMP chassis. So although it's not a real Saint-Chamond, it is a real armoured vehicle, just being used in a different way, having another armoured vehicle mocked up on it, which personally I think is quite cool.
I think it really works well. I mean, you've got infantry terrified of tanks. Job done.
Yeah, I think there's some criticisms on sort of that battle, that engagement on exactly how the tanks and the infantry are used together. And yes, you can nitpick all of that. But as you said, like, it works. It shows the sheer utter terror that even by 1718, that if you're an infantryman in a trench, you've got nothing to stop this metal box coming at you. I mean, probably the best made replica for any film is, slight bias here probably, but it's got to be that Mark IV from Warhorse. It is an absolutely exceptional vehicle. It only appears on screen with probably about half a second, I think, in total, but it does its job perfectly.
It is superb. I mean, we've got it here. The first time I saw it, I walked up to it, 4 feet away. You can't tell it's not a real Mark IV tank. It really is superb. I mean, it's built in mild steel on I think it's a Caterpillar slew digger drivetrain. But it really does do the job.
Stephen wanted the tank to be good, you know, because it is a symbolic part of the movie where, you know, it is the horses versus the machinery. We built a World War I Mark IV tank out of steel. We got an excavator motor and stuff for the drive units, had all the plates made up, and it's, you know, it's pretty authentic. If you look at it from, you know, we had some military advisors in that were quite impressed with it.
Spielberg wanted to actually use a real First World War tanks. We have got First World War tanks, but they are too fragile. I mean, these things are 100+ years old, stress cracks in the hull. This is about as good as it gets in the form of a replica.
When it came to the end of the production, obviously they had no use for it anymore, and because the museum helped in a way, we were able to buy it. So yeah, I think it fits in great with our collection. Obviously we don't run our World War I tanks anymore, but as you just said, Chris, I mean, from a couple of feet away, you can't tell that that's not a real Mark IV. It does the job great. We use it in our World War I displays for stuff like Tank Fest, quite often with our replica A7V, and personally I think it does the job. Goes like 3 miles an hour. It moves like a Mark IV. It moves incredibly slow, and that's all you really need it to do, really. So yeah. But that wasn't the first time that Spielberg's crew was here at the Tank Museum, because earlier on we got Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, which featured a tank heavily based off of our Mark VIII International.
And it's actually a really good replica. Like the vehicle itself is extremely well built. Yeah, pretty much the hull of it is an exact replica of our Mark VIII. They made it out of steel rather than aluminium, so it was more durable during the scenes, and they could actually weld it back together should they need to. I mean, they didn't, because they built it that well. It still exists today, I think, in one of the Disney parks. But there are a couple of issues with it. First of which being the turret, which appears to be some sort of Churchill-inspired thing, because, well, you know, a tank with guns on the side is not tanky enough, apparently, for cinema, so they whacked a turret on it for good measure.
Yeah. The other thing is the speed. I mean, the thing's doing 40 miles an hour, not 4 miles an hour, as it sort of plummets off the cliff. But hey, what the hell? It's an excellent piece of cinema, isn't it?
Good fun, really good fun. And it is about the only tank that we've got in the collection that you could have a fist fight between 4 people and it'd actually be, you know, acceptable within the interior of the vehicle. So Yeah, it's just a bit of fun, isn't it, that one?
What I must say though is on those interior shots, it does look pretty real. It's believable. I mean, if you look inside our Mark 8, as you said, there's more than enough room for 4 blokes to be having a fist fight in there. But also, I do notice in that scene there are a couple of shots where you can see what looks like the butt of a 6-pounder gun. Now, whether or not they're real or not, I have no idea, but they do look very, very much the same as what we've got in our World War I section. So, who knows?
Anyway, then, of course, we have got the very recent German language film, Der Tiger.
Yes, so this one, it's not a real tiger, but it's a real tank. Yet again, it's based off of something Russian. It is based off a T-55. And actually, it's a really, really good replica. In terms of the wheels, because that's usually the giveaway, as we said, with all quiet on the Western Front, the wheels do tend to be the giveaway. And obviously a T-55 has got a really obvious difference between that and the Tiger. But they sort of used 2 methods to disguise that fact. One being CGI when it was running, so they put on the interleaved road wheels in post. And when it was stationary, apparently they just had magnetic clip-on road wheels, so it doesn't look any different. I mean, from watching bits of the film, the only criticism or only real difference between that and a Tiger is the physical track itself. And obviously you can't just go around finding Tiger track these days. However, there is an underlying issue with the film, which I think Fam is going to have a talk about.
Yeah, I think a lot of people as well, when they first saw the Tiger, was the fact that using a Tiger to go way far behind enemy lines to go retrieve a commander, if I remember correctly, just isn't the most realistic. I mean, you're on about a heavy German tank, which would have had an entire logistics chain just to keep it running in terms of ammunition, fuel, support. And obviously it's a film, it really doesn't matter, but if that were to happen in real life, I wager they'd probably get, 30 miles before they run into some sort of problem where they need some sort of support from somewhere. And the ending. I hate the ending. Sorry. It's just... I'm sorry, the more I think about that film, the more it pisses me off. Someone had to read that script and go, you know what, that's gonna work.
In the film 1917, a tank does make an appearance in a shell crater. However, it isn't a real one. It is just CGI. There's nothing there at all.
What amazes me about this is the degree they went to get that little bit, that few seconds of CGI right. They actually came here. They scanned our Mark II, because you can see it's our Mark II right down to the battle damage. They've altered it slightly because it's got a long 6-pounder gun, so it's trying to be a Mark I. But to do that, to take all that trouble, just for something that's in the film for like no time at all, the 2 Tommies just walk past it, and that's it, job done.
Yeah, but it works.
It worked.
And it adds to the film.
Yeah. Now, there are some films that involve tanks, but in a totally impossible way. There are a few of these, but the first one that springs to mind has got to be the 80.
Yes, those of you who haven't seen the film before, we're not really sure how they get there, but by the looks of it, their plane disintegrates and they end up in the back of a tank. It took us a while, I think, to work out which tank it was, but it appears to be an M8 AGS, which is an American cancelled assault gun sort of situation, armed with a 105mm gun. And it comes out the back of this plane, and some level of realism. It was designed to be airdropped, probably with parachutes slightly larger than the ones shown on camera, but then they go and have a mid-air gunfight with a Reaper.
Splashdown. We just lost one of the drones.
And then they try to soften the landing by firing the main gun.
Hey, get onto the main gun! There's a lake a half-mile away from this position! What the hell am I trying to hit? Trust me! Rotate the turret 82 degrees! Fire now! Fire everything! Come on, baby!
Okay, So you've got a few points there. Mine's a bit more boring, but the M8 is unbelievably small and cramped inside. This thing, it's like a TARDIS. It's got so much room for 5 guys, and you've even got B.A. Baracus himself, who hates flying, tied up in the corner. I mean, you could hold a tea party in there. It's far too big.
I think what does it for me is the fact that in that sequence, I mean, the longer I watch it, the more my brain cells die. But also, in that sequence, they are firing the main gun, and there are shell casings. I just wonder how they don't get absolutely minced while flying through the air, incredibly fast speed, not being minced by spent shell casings on the inside of their tank.
Cinema.
Absolute cinema. Anyway.
However, if you want some serious industrial level chaos and destruction with a tank on a motorway, it's got to be Fast and Furious 6.
And it's a chieftain, because, you know, we love chieftains here. Well, it's a chieftain in a dress, really, isn't it? And just as a general point, isn't it, that most tanks in American films, even if they're pretending to be an Abrams, they are in fact chieftains. You can usually tell because of the track or the vehicle's pouring out smoke or something like that. Well, you basically can't get a hold of American armour in the States, so it's a chieftain. But this one is very much beautiful.
What the hell is wrong with you? This isn't part of the plan.
All I really thought when I saw that chieftain burst out the back of that truck was, whoa, I don't think I've ever seen a car struggle to keep up with a chieftain. And to be fair, if there's anyone watching who ever served on chieftain, you'll probably have thought the exact same thing. But yeah, it's just absolutely a ridiculous scene. Also, I really don't think a crushed Ford Mustang is going to stop a 55-ton chieftain in its tracks.
I mean, after all that, Goldeneye seems a bit tame. 007 driving around the streets of St. Petersburg trying to crush its entire police department.
Apparently, this scene took 3 weeks to film. And one of the things they had to do to the tank was to modify the tracks. So I think it's quite interesting because you basically have a T-55 using chieftain tracks to make it drift, because steel track on ground equals more traction.
Well, ruined road
and
as well.
ruined road, yeah. Whereas rubber and track equals less traction. So for anyone wondering, yes, you can drift the tank.
Should you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, correct.
Actually, trying to film, I mean, a tank is an immensely destructive object. You're trying to film this thing, smashing its way around the centre of a city. I mean, there were bits where they couldn't do that. There's a bit where they go down the side of the river. They actually had to use a Saladin armoured car, much, much lighter, dressed up as a T-55 to do that. To be honest, I mean, I just watched this just after Fast and Furious. I think it goes on a bit. I mean, how many police cars do you actually need to squash? Did like the bit where he picks that statue up, the Pegasus, and gives it a ride and then embeds it in a building. I thought that was quite neat. But the rest
standard tactic, that, isn't it?
Absolutely. The rest of it, yeah, it's a bit drawn out, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny seeing Pierce Brosnan just sort of stuck halfway out, like what, waist upwards out the front of a T-55. I mean, for those of you who don't know, the actual driver position is on the left side. So in that actual scene, you have a driver who is actually driving and basically just Pierce Brosnan going,
He's just
looking
making
like
it
he's
up.
about to have a hernia. But aside from that, it is a pretty cool scene.
Could have been using his toes.
Before we wrap up, I think we all want to have a brief discussion on some of our honourable mentions of films or TV series that we haven't had time to discuss in detail.
I can hear the comments now going, you didn't mention this film, you didn't mention this film. I'm going to say, if you haven't already seen it, Iron Fury, also known as T-34, and also one of my favourites, Girls in the Panzer. Those who actually have seen it will know how good it actually is.
I'd have to go down the HBO route. Band of Brothers and Pacific, both excellent.
Yep, and because I'm a child, I'm going to go for Mr. Bean's Holiday, because there's got a shtug in it. I'm not even going to try and explain why, and it's actually the same shtug that's in Band of Brothers. And one of my favourite films, the second instalment of Police Squad, has got, I think it's an M114 dressed up as a tank, but it's a great film.
Anyway, whatever you think about what we've seen and talked about, you have to admit that in all these movies, every movie with a tank in, the tank is the memorable bit. The tank is the star.
Through St. Petersburg, getting chased by their police department.
All of it.
Yeah.
Sounds like my last weekend.
And then I could come in with, well, actually, if you think that, this bloody 1917, two Tommies going to find a lost battalion. Why did they just drop it a message or something? Lost Battalion of the Devons. Let's send two thick Tommies to find them, shall we? They'll get killed after 200 yards, but hey, at least we tried.
So in a way, it's basically just gone full circle of filming bigger scale models of tank interiors.
This next film, I'm not sure you would describe it as a comedy or what.
It's just moving on from whatever Fam said.